There is a garden where human souls meet, a place of tangled vines and blooming flowers, where laughter rings like wind chimes and trust grows like wild ivy. But every garden has its shadows, places where the light does not quite reach, where something waits, patient and still. To walk among others is to dance between sunlight and shade, never entirely sure whether the rustling leaves conceal a friend or a predator. Evil is not always a thunderclap, a sudden storm that announces its presence with fury. More often, it is the slow, creeping frost that withers roots before the plant even knows it is dying. It is the smile that does not touch the eyes, the hand that offers help only to tighten into a fist when you lean in. To recognize evil, not as a myth or a distant abstraction, but as a living, breathing force in human form, is to arm oneself against the slow poison of deception. This is not about paranoia, nor is it about seeing monsters where there are only flawed human beings. It is about discernment, the quiet art of listening to the whispers beneath words, of noticing the cracks in the mask. Evil, in its most insidious form, does not announce itself with horns and a forked tongue. It wears the face of a neighbor, a lover, a mentor, someone who knows exactly how to make you doubt your own instincts. Imagine standing before a mirror that does not reflect light but absorbs it. A surface that shows you only what it wants you to see. The truly dangerous individuals among us are masters of such mirrors, crafting illusions so seamless that you question whether the darkness is in them or in you. They are the ones who speak of love while sowing division, who offer gifts laced with obligation, who demand trust while eroding yours. But evil leaves traces, subtle as a spider's thread against the skin. It flickers in the eyes just a second too long, in the laugh that comes a beat too late, in the way their stories never quite add up. It is the uncanny valley of human behavior, something almost right, almost familiar, but with edges that cut when you get too close. To navigate this terrain, we must become students of the unseen, learning to read the language of silence, the grammar of withheld truths. It is not about distrusting everyone, but about recognizing that some wolves do not howl. They whisper, and in those whispers, if you listen closely, you will hear the hollow echo of something missing, the absence of empathy, the vacuum where conscience should reside. This journey is both ancient and urgent, as old as humanity's first betrayal and as fresh as yesterday's heartbreak. It asks us to look beyond the surface, to trust not just what is said, but what is felt in the spaces between words. For evil thrives in the unexamined, in the willingness to look away. But when we dare to see clearly, we take the first step in dismantling its power. To understand the nature of evil in human form is to study the invisible architecture of manipulation. The way certain individuals construct facades so convincing that even the most discerning eyes can be fooled, at least for a time. These are not cartoon villains, twirling mustaches and cackling in the dark. They are far more dangerous because they know how to blend in, how to mirror goodness so precisely that their darkness becomes indistinguishable from light. But beneath the surface, there are patterns, recurring themes that betray their true nature. One of the most telling signs is the absence of empathy, not the occasional lapse in compassion that plagues even the best of us, but a fundamental inability to stand in another's suffering and feel it as real. Empathy is the thread that weaves human connection. Without it, a person may mimic care, but their actions will always circle back to self-interest. They may console you with one hand while calculating how your pain can serve them with the other. It is like watching a marionette perform human emotion. The gestures are there, but the soul behind them is hollow. Then there is the art of gaslighting, a psychological sleight of hand that makes you question your own reality. The evil person does not merely lie. They reconstruct truth so skillfully that you begin to distrust your memory, your instincts, even your sanity. They will deny saying things they clearly said, reframe cruelty as concern, and accuse you of overreacting when you call out their behavior. It is a slow erosion, like waves smoothing stone, until you no longer recognize the shoreline of your own mind. Another hallmark is the refusal to take responsibility, a deflection so seamless it feels like trying to grasp smoke. When confronted, they twist narratives, casting themselves as the victim, the misunderstood hero, or the unfairly persecuted. Accountability is a foreign land to them, and they will burn bridges rather than cross into it. Their apologies, if they come at all, are laced with conditions. I'm sorry you feel that way, placing the burden of their actions back onto you. Perhaps most chilling is their ability to exploit trust, turning vulnerability into a weapon. They study people, learning what they value, what they fear, what they long for, then use that knowledge to control them. Like a spider sensing the faintest tremor in its web. They know exactly when to offer comfort, when to withdraw affection, when to dangle hope just out of reach. Their generosity is never free. It is an investment, one they expect to repay with interest. And finally, there is the mask slipping, the rare, unguarded moment when the carefully constructed persona cracks, revealing something colder beneath. It might be a flash of contempt in their eyes when they think no one is looking, a smirk at another's misfortune, or a sudden, disproportionate rage when their control is threatened. These moments are fleeting but telling, like lightning illuminating a landscape for just a second, long enough to see what was always there, hidden in the dark. These themes are not isolated. They intertwine, reinforcing one another in a self-sustaining system of manipulation. To recognize them is to see beyond the performance, to perceive the blueprint of deception that evil individuals follow, consciously or not. The question then becomes, how do we move from recognition to action? How do we protect ourselves without surrendering to cynicism? There is an old tale, whispered in many forms across cultures, of a being who could wear the faces of the lost. It would appear as a grieving widow, a wounded traveler, a child separated from its mother. Whatever guise would most compel the kindness of strangers. And when the charitable soul drew near, offering food, shelter, or comfort, the creature would reveal its true nature. A thing of hunger, not for bread or coin, but for the very essence of human trust. This shapeshifter lives on in the modern world, not as folklore, but as flesh and blood. Those who wear humanity like a borrowed skin, waiting for the moment to strike. Evil has always understood the power of symbolism, of myth. It does not announce itself with the herald of doom. It slips into the spaces between our assumptions, our willingness to believe in goodness. Consider the story of the two wolves, that ancient parable where an elder tells a child that inside every person rages a battle between a dark wolf and a light one. Which wolf wins? The child asks. The elder replies, the one you feed. But what the tale does not say is that some have already starved the light wolf to death long ago. And now they roam the world, seeking to devour the nourishment meant for others. There is another metaphor, drawn from nature, that reveals a deeper truth, the phenomenon of mimicry. In the wild, some creatures evolve to resemble poisonous or dangerous species, deterring predators without ever developing venom of their own. But there are others, the most dangerous, that appear harmless, even beautiful, until their bite paralyzes their prey. The orchid mantis does not look like a threat. It looks like a flower, delicate and alluring. And so the unsuspecting insect draws near, only to be seized in an inescapable grip. This is the way of the evil person. They do not present as a storm to be avoided, but as a sanctuary to be sought. History, too, offers its allegories. Take the myth of the Trojan horse, a gift that carried destruction within it. The citizens of Troy saw only the grandeur of the offering, the flattery of their enemies' surrender. They did not think to question why such a prize had been left at their gates, or what might be concealed inside. Their trust was their undoing. And so it is with the manipulator, who delivers compliments wrapped around barbs, who offers help laced with control, who presents themselves as a gift while hiding their true intent within. But perhaps the most revealing symbol is that of the black hole, a cosmic force so dense that it warps space and time around it, swallowing all light that crosses its horizon. From the outside, it may appear as mere absence, an emptiness where something should be, but its pull is inescapable. The evil person operates in much the same way. They create a gravity of chaos, bending relationships and circumstances to their will, draining the energy and joy of those around them while offering nothing in return. To resist requires more than strength. It requires escape velocity, the will to break free before the pull becomes too strong. These narratives are not mere stories. They are maps, showing us the terrain of deception that has existed as long as humanity itself. The faces change, the tactics evolve, but the underlying patterns remain. To see them is to recognize that evil is not some supernatural force, but a very human capacity, one that thrives in the unexamined, the unquestioned, the blindly trusted. The greatest challenge in recognizing evil is that it rarely appears in our lives wielding a dagger. It arrives holding a bouquet, speaking the language of our deepest needs. The intellectual understanding of manipulation is one thing. The lived practice of discernment is another. It requires us to develop a kind of emotional sonar, sending out pulses of attention and reading the echoes that return. This is not about living in suspicion, but about cultivating a quiet awareness that notices when words and actions fail to align, when charm feels just slightly too polished, when apologies carry the metallic taste of obligation. Consider the practice of boundary setting as a form of spiritual ecology. Just as a gardener learns which plants nourish the soil and which deplete it, we must become discerning about who we allow into our emotional ecosystem. The evil person will often test boundaries in small ways first: a dismissive comment disguised as humor, a harmless lie to gauge your reaction, a favor that subtly crosses lines. These are probes, testing the resilience of your perimeter. The moment you soften a boundary out of guilt or fear, you send a signal. This territory can be encroached upon. The key is not to build fortresses, but to cultivate a quiet, unshakable clarity about what you will and will not accept, and to walk away when those lines are consistently crossed. In professional environments, the dynamics become more complex. The workplace is a petri dish for manipulation, where power structures provide cover for toxic behaviors. The colleague who takes credit for your ideas, the boss who pits team members against each other, the executive whose high standards mask a need to dominate. These are modern manifestations of an ancient pattern. The challenge here is to document, to create visible trails where gaslighting cannot easily erase them. But more importantly, it requires recognizing when an organization's culture actively rewards destructive behaviors and making the difficult calculation of whether to adapt, resist, or depart. Relationships present the most intimate battlefield. Love and trust are the oxygen manipulators breathe even as they suffocate others with their needs. The red flags are often visible early, the intensity that feels flattering until it becomes smothering. The past they recount where every ex was crazy. The way your accomplishments gradually become threats rather than causes for celebration. What makes these situations so perilous is that our own biochemistry conspires against us. The dopamine of intermittent reinforcement, the cortisol of walking on eggshells, creating an addiction to resolution that never truly comes. Breaking free requires what psychologists call cognitive restructuring. Not just leaving the relationship, but rewiring the neural pathways that mistake drama for passion and control for safety. On a societal level, we see these patterns scale into something even more dangerous. The demagogue who frames cruelty as strength, the corporation that treats exploitation as innovation, the systems designed to keep people too exhausted and divided to notice their common chains. These are macro expressions of the same malignant traits. The antidote here is both communal and individual. Building networks of verification where truth can be cross-checked, cultivating media literacy that recognizes emotional manipulation in messaging, and perhaps most crucially, nurturing the kind of self-worth that refuses to be flattered into complicity. To live in this world without becoming either its victim or its cynic requires a rare balance. The wisdom to see darkness clearly without letting it distort your vision of humanity as a whole. The evil person thrives in the extremes, in those who trust too easily and those who trust not at all. The middle path is neither naive nor paranoid. It is discerning. It understands that the best defense against deception is not suspicion, but self-awareness. The cultivated ability to notice when your emotions are being played like an instrument, when your compassion is being weaponized against you. This is ultimately a call to transformation, not of the world first, but of ourselves. For the most potent shield against manipulation is a soul rooted in its own worth. When you know your value, flattery loses its power to seduce and criticism its power to devastate. When you cultivate inner abundance, you stop seeking validation from those who would ration it as a means of control. The evil person's greatest fear is not exposure, but indifference. The moment you stop wrestling with their narrative, stop trying to prove your goodness to someone committed to denying it. So let this be not just a warning, but an invitation to develop the quiet courage that walks away from toxic dynamics without fanfare, to build the self-trust that hears alarm bells and heeds them, To become the kind of person who cannot be manipulated, not because you've mastered the art of suspicion, but because you've mastered the art of self-possession. The light you cultivate within will always be the brightest torch for seeing others clearly. Walk forward with eyes open, heart guarded wisely, and spirit undimmed.